Alright, so I'm going to start this out immediately by saying trigger warning. Whether you yourself have suicidal tendencies, thoughts, suffer from severe depression, etc., I'm going to be nice enough for this particular video to tell you probably shouldn't watch it because I openly speak very, very boldly. That means without any filters, without holding back, or censoring myself whatsoever. I very truthfully, honestly, openly speak about this topic of suicide and suicide relations. So if you can't handle that because of the reasons aforementioned, or because you're just an oversensitive pansy, do not continue watching this video. Thank you. For you social justice warriors, you can kiss my ass for one. I'm not taking sides for anyone, nor am I encouraging anyone to follow through with any suicidal things. So you can stop right there. That said, let's continue on. I argue on the behalf of suicidal folk, because everyone's always anti-suicide, but let's take a view from someone who has depression, shall we? This is something that I had a conversation with a close friend of mine over text messages, but I'm going to read it out to you. I have argued on behalf of suicidal folk that you can be completely logical while in a suicidal state, where I am met with, you cannot be logical if you are being suicidal because being suicidal is being irrational, type of remarks. This is of course just a pathetic attempt to invalidate my statement with what they fear most of all anti-suicidal folk and therapists, and that is a completely self-aware, conscientious, logically applied individual who under completely understandable and reasonable circumstances wishes to end their own life and therefore does. Now, of course, in response, there was a pretty good lengthy response to that, and pretty spot on, but I'll cover the little bit of it. He responds with, it's because the word suicidal is taken to the extreme, and most of everyone who thinks anyone who claims they are suicidal are actually on the verge of doing so ASAP. Yeah, generally that seems to be how it goes, because they're ignorant to how, depression and suicide really is. Anyways, not only, and this is me, of course, I continue on with saying, not only that, but I further argue this, that we do not ask to be born. We are only against our will put on this earth. Who are you, or who are they, to say against or otherwise that if I want to go, then I should be able to do so? Who are they to oppose this? My body, my choice, am I right? What is the benefit of their opposition? To make themselves look better? To make themselves look good? To better themselves off of it, so they can say, oh, I prevented someone from killing themselves. Look at me, I'm such a great person. To make themselves feel better? Does my continuing to live benefit them at all? If I was to die today, what would it do to the life, or have any sort of effect on the life of the therapist, or otherwise against this life? Would they be affected? Or would it be their egos affected? And their virtue signaling taking that blow? I had a good conversation with a registered nurse, and she was conversing about, as it was a controversial topic, so of course she knew I was going to be into it. And that was assisted suicide. And yes, this does play a role into my argument here. Whereby, all intents and purposes, the individual was going to die anyway via cancer or some slow, painful death, and so it would be medically assisted to be killed, i.e. assisted suicide. They effectively kill themselves by way of RN or other medical practitioner. It is considered immoral or unethical, but again, is 100% logical, rational, and well thought out. Not to mention completely reasonable. So I continue on to say, what I am saying is that even though those on the verge of doing so, committing suicide, can also be logical. Even if it's a simple, my life sucks and I didn't ask for this, I didn't ask to be born, I don't want to continue living. Or if it's to the other extreme of, I'm going to die anyways in 5 months, so let's just get it over with. Both are completely acceptable and reasonable. I get it. All virtue signaling aside, I can get that, whether it's from emotional breakdown or a well thought out, what have you. That statement is what it is, but I get it. The mainstream and the main ideals of suicidal folk is that they are so emotionally unstable that there is no way that they can have the clarity of mind to actually make a good enough reason intellectually, logically, or mentally and emotionally to make a decision such as that. For the most part, sure, I can agree with that. A lot of people are just, in the moment, super depressed, whatever. I can get it. But it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility for someone to be so well thought out in their decision. Thinking every little detail out and why and the how and what led up to it and so on and so forth. To come to a logical conclusion as to why it's in the right for them to go on and do it. As in, to say, go on to commit suicide. In saying that if I don't want to continue on with this hellhole of a life because society has degraded to the point of fuck shit, having no further purpose to go on living this shitty ass life, then you know what? I can make big boy decisions on my own. This is not up to others to decide. If I see life as intolerable, then that is on me and me alone. It backs people up into a corner. Do they wish to continue to see me suffer and not end my own life? Or, as my friend so eloquently stated, to escape pain, and no longer having to feel the pain you endure every day after day after day for your whole life? So we have a dilemma of ethics, morality, and logical reasoning, critical thinking going against each other in such a prostulation situation. What takes priority and why and how? It's like humanity and emotion versus logic and critical thinking, as it were. Who is in the right? How are they in the right? In the end, it's not anyone's side who is correct, ironically enough, due to how it's subjective. Oh yes, that's right, subjective. What is a shitty life to one person may actually be the very best life to another. What one considers to be, say, irrational may not be so irrational to another. The only argument that can be won is that of a moral high ground. And that's about it. So what does this lead us with? It leads us exactly to what it started out with. The individual. Themselves. If they wholly justify their action, then well, that's on them. If this life is really that intolerable, that insufferable, that ungodly, painful to live by day and night by night, then who is to say that the individual is wrong while they go on a moral high ground, virtue signaling they don't realize just how sadistic they are being simultaneously. By keeping the sufferer alive, they are knowingly letting the individual continue to suffer the pain, the agony, and so on. But hey, at least they made themselves look good and make themselves look like good people because they prevented someone from ending their own life. Right? Yeah. And of course, he gives a good long response, but to keep it short, exactly, he responds with exactly. That is why it's hard to keep your head above water. You are always in pain. You know you dying will destroy the loved ones you have, but eventually the tiredness of fighting the pain will rule the guilt of hurting the ones you love. It's a classic ethics question. It's good to prevent someone from killing themselves for the sake of them possibly having the chance to find their true happiness in their lives one day. But there's always the point of we have no idea of what the future holds. We could be improving that person's life by preventing them from killing themselves. But we could have just made them stay in their eternal hell for longer, which is a valid point. So anyways, after his response, I reply by saying to him, if people decide to keep on fighting, whether it be for their cat, their loved ones, for painting, whatever their reason, it could be anything, for staying alive so they can watch their favorite show, I don't care. Whatever their reason be to keep on fighting, then so be it, and kudos to them. However, if they can't go on, and if the world really is too tough for them, then who am I to blame them? Who am I to say otherwise to them? Fuck. Subjectivity makes people think they are right in their minds based off of their biases, beliefs, upbringings, and any and all other influences they have had to come to their conclusions and mind frames. There's a 50-50% chance that maybe something good will come from keeping them alive, but also could have only make things prolonged in their own hell. Furthermore, even if they do find this possible, happiness, it's still always going to be there, i.e. the depression is always going to be there. So what is the point then? Ethically or otherwise? Again, brings us to the individual. If the individual, whether they have found happiness or not, still makes the last call. They can have it all. Money, sluts, bitches, hoes, a wife, whatever. A nice living, etc. Everything they could want and then some. But if that motherfucker don't want to live in the world no more, then a motherfucker don't have to. Happiness just being the guise of what they really have feeling-wise, until they let it be known how they really are feeling by their actions. Therein the whole actions defeats words and is superior to words, which comes to mind. In which he replies, exactly, you can say the person killing themselves was selfish for putting all the people who loved them and cared about them through the hell. But at the same time, all those people who tried so hard to prevent it are technically just as selfish for wanting that person to suffer just so you don't have to live life without them. To which I retort, or reply rather, ethics has been a battle as long as intellectualism has been around. Morality versus ethics. So ethics versus, well, everything. Well, the particular reason of its ambiguity or other perceptions, thus why the psychology versus ethics is such a big thing. Explanations are had, but result in usually more questions and different ways to argue to and or against it. I also note that the majority cannot handle this conversation without getting all crybaby red-faced over what is being said between us. Facts and logic are replaced with emotion and virtue signaling, whether it's social justice warriors or just flat-out emotional responses. As it pertains to the cycle of selfishness versus selfishness, it's more of who's more righteous in their selfishness of keep alive or not. Exclude the moral high ground crap and it's pretty much half and half. But really, as I've stated before, it's not up to anyone other than the sufferer to decide. It's not up to other people to say, hey, stay alive, when it's just too much to contend with or otherwise. That's not right of them to do. All they are getting is good person people points +1 by society, as society will look at these people as such kind and caring people for not wanting other people to end their own lives and preventing them from doing so, all the while letting them suffer and ironically not actually helping them more times than none to actually help that person beyond that point. It's like, okay, so you didn't kill yourself, see ya. Then never see or hear from them again until they have to virtue signal again to show society how good of a person they are by preventing someone from ending their own life, then acting like they don't exist after they keep the person alive. Yeah, awesome. Then of course I get a really, really long reply, but I also have an ending note basically that states how generally people like myself are considered a negative Nancy, as they say. Possibly even neurotic, generally seeing how shitty the world is and over the good in the world, but it doesn't make it any less true either. But they like to conveniently leave that little tidbit out though. They see my negative viewings on the world as irrational and hyper-focused, because we are so focused on the negative and bad. But again, doesn't make it any less prevalent or any less true. So the belief to those who are differing from us call us neurotic or negative. We see them generally living in the la butterfly and rainbows land. So we tick differently than them. But in regard to actually going beyond just preventing them from ending their own life, a good little note is reassurance and checking in. It's a good thing to do. Knowing that somebody, anybody, cares is enough to usually get most people by. As it's a constant, and it's a consistently good thing in their life. That gives them just the right amount of happiness or hope or joy or whatever that they need to get through their event or personal demons. And that's kind of where I left it off on that conversation. So with that said, look after your happy friends just as much as you look after your depressed friends. You never know what demons are being fought. You never know what they're going through unless they specifically tell you. And even if they specifically tell you, that's even more important that you check on them, because they were vulnerable with you. They trusted you enough to tell you this information. So be good to one another. Look out for each other. Check up on your friends. Call them. Text them, whatever. Let them know that you care. So, until next time.